Hey Collective, it's Alan. Welcome back to the channel. For this little video, what I wanted to speak about was the illusion of power. As I mentioned in some of the previous videos, my interpretation of power is that it's something handed from the universe to people in the world. It's one of those things that you don't want to hold on to like a skillet because it'll burn you if you hold it on too tightly and so forth. And it's something that's technically borrowed because at any point, if you can't handle it judiciously, then it's taken away, right? But with all the power grabs going around the world right now and people trying to get something that's not technically theirs to hold, I thought I'd speak to how this can actually show itself early on in people individually. And so I wanted to do it in a way that was very relatable. So let's use cars as a way to kind of understand what I'm talking about. So when people go through their lives, they tend to choose cars according to their personality, or which translates to an esoteric theosophy, the ego. Like it's an ego presentation that comes through. And nowhere better to see that than in a car. So let's talk about the variations between actual power, the truly powerful, and then borrowed power. And so the best way to do this, and I'm not castigating anybody, I'm not throwing stones, but I do want to point out that have you ever noticed that people who are sports car drivers pretty much can be kind of classified as a sweeping generalization, but you can kind of look at them as borrowed power, right? The truly powerful would never drive a sports car or a convertible. They wouldn't want that, right? But a borrowed power, someone who lives in someone else's legacy, someone who needs to grab attention, is not somebody who actually has power, right? Because if you understand power, then you understand that a powerful person has someone drive them, right? And so it's one of those very interesting things. People who drive themselves in a very sportsman car and like flashy, are what I call the borrowed power. And what that is have you ever noticed that if they weren't living in someone else's legacy, if they actually had real power, then they wouldn't bring attention to themselves. But when you live in the shadow of someone else, then you're constantly trying to shine. And so I always thought that was very interesting, because when I see people in convertibles, I think, well, okay, there's stuff going on there, because the ego is trying to show itself in a way that says, I have either worked for everything I've had, and now I want to be praised, or and this is sweeping generalizations, but you understand what I'm saying in a very visual way. Or mommy and daddy bought me this, or whatever it is. But you understand the variation, because a truly powerful person doesn't just have somebody drive them. They don't want attention. The truly powerful are about privacy. They're all about their privacy. And so the idea of driving like a sports car to the truly powerful is just kind of like, oh, they must work for us. You see what I'm saying? Like it's one of those things where you're in someone else's illusion because you're vying for attention where you should be able to stand on your own. And so I was thinking about that because someone had asked me if I would ever get a convertible, and I said, nothing against convertibles, by the way. I mean, I really wanted one in high school, but now that I'm older, like I'm a Jeep guy. I prefer something more demure and something that doesn't bring that much attention, but that I can still like take the roof off, but that I can still keep my privacy in, which is kind of funny, right? And so I was thinking about it, and it wasn't like I was trying to think of anything nasty to say, but it just made me laugh because I'm in LA, so there's a lot of people who are borrowed power people who have found the light of attention and are all about it, and so they're very much materialistic. And so I was looking at them, and then I saw literally I think it was 3 black cars pass by, and I go, no, that's power. They have somebody driving them where they need to go because they're busy doing what? They're working. And so, or it's like they don't need to do that. They're always on the phone or doing whatever they need to do. And so I thought that was a very interesting way of drawing a parallel or a line between what is truly powerful and what is borrowed power. The assumption of power here. And so I just remember that when I was looking at because the convertibles just kept coming. There was just one after the other, and I was just kind of giggling because I was like, it's like super expensive sunglasses, super expensive clothes, in a very shiny car. And I was just like, well, even if I ever became super wealthy, that would be the complete opposite of what I would want, because I would want to be, if you have that much money, then you are in the limelight. how much limelight do you need? You need it even in the car? And so I just started giggling, because the truly powerful are the completely opposite. They are reclusive. They are eccentric. They want their privacy. They don't want people looking over their hedges. So it's always like the house that's a little bit more demure, but that has a huge, like, a security guard, and like this huge, like, fence made of leaves and stuff, so that nobody can see and they can't get their pictures taken. But they buy enough land that they can walk around their land and get out and kind of enjoy the beauty, because I'm all about, like, staying outside. And so I thought, well, I would never want, like, to live in a place that's known for, like, I wouldn't live in an area in which it's really easy to gain access to, like, my windows. I would have to have, like, a huge hedge all the way around my house. And I thought, well, is that, like, hiding? And I realized, no, it's just that the truly powerful have power from within. And so the last thing they need is more attention, because wherever they go, they command the attention. So they don't bring it towards them. And so that's kind of what's going on in the world right now. The truly powerful, the elite, are very interesting, because they are used. I used to look at them in the context of, like, because there is a shadow side, like there's a shadow government, there's a shadow of the wealthy, that are more negative, right? They're very dark, and they do stupid shit. And they, like Lebanon is a perfect example of when that blast went through Lebanon. Like, you can see corruption, and you can see that there's a nasty side to that environment. But there's also just the people who are omegas, people who are alphas, who choose to be more humorous or more reclusive, or have idiosyncrasies that make them powerful, because that's what the divine enjoys, is the variation. The people who are unique and stand out to the divine are of interest, because it's a new experience that it may not have in its, like, repertoire. And so I was thinking about, like, myself, because I was looking at, like, let's be honest, like, when you get to a certain vibration, the people that you are attracted to become smaller and smaller and smaller. People think that the truly powerful have this ability to choose anyone they want, but it's the complete opposite. When you're truly powerful, you need somebody who matches your vibrational output and what you take in. And so for me, it would need to be somebody who is very charitable, somebody who really believes in humanitarian effort, someone who actually goes out of their way to educate people, to share what they know in a way that's not, like, hammering down or being dictatorish. I said dig. Bound to go, well. But someone who has humor, and, like, for me, that's very important. Now, the interesting variation with me is I'm exceedingly spiritual, and so I probably am going to attract someone who is exceedingly powerful, but who's very reclusive and has idiosyncrasies that are very odd to other people. But to me, it's going to be like a big turn on, right? That's going to be like, oh, yeah, talk to me about NASA. Talk to me about, like, things that other people would be like, what is he doing? And I'd just be like, hey, that turns me on. Because it's a different mindset, it's a different vibration. And so I was thinking about what the world is seeing right now with all these power grabs, and the fact that it's an illusion. They can't hold on to the power. The truly powerful are powerful from within, and wherever they go, they command the power and the respect, but they don't bring attention to themselves. They just walk into the room. And I kept thinking of, like, The Devil Wears Prada and Meryl Streep's character, who just, as soon as she does the pursing of the lips, it's a catastrophe. That's power. And I'm not saying anything about her personality and stuff like that, but I'm saying that is the essence of true power. And so I was looking around the world, and there's all these people vying for attention and really enjoying the limelight. And I'm just like, you do understand that we're in a reset, right? Like, things are about to change really big time. And so you're going to see the truth of power in a very, very graceful way. And that's what I would just prepare the collective, because it's kind of funny, And there's nothing, like, if you want a sports car and you want all the attention and you want people to praise you because you've materialistically done something phenomenal, congratulations, you did. And no one's going to take that away from you. But what I'm saying is that to the truly powerful, or to the observer that's mentally powerful, we just kind of look at you and go, they must work for us. Oh, mid-level to executive. Because otherwise, why would you want your privacy? You're all about privacy. You want to have your own life, and you want to, like, people look at really big, huge, expensive sunglasses as a big indication of power and wealth. But I've always noticed something interesting. Very powerful people don't wear sunglasses for that reason. They wear sunglasses to protect the glare from the cameras. But they don't put themselves in a car accident. They have a driver. They don't put themselves in the middle of magazines. They stay away from the magazines. They don't interpret the world the way that we do. And so when you get to a certain vibration, some of these things become very clear. So then the question becomes, well, how do you function in a world where your vibration is super high, but you may not be economically as well off as other people? And I just realized that it's just how you communicate and how you choose to use your voice is of a greater importance to the people that I would be attracted to in a friendship manner, or in a partnership in business, or in a loving, committed relationship. Because I find the oddity, the things that stand out to me the most are, really, really pale white, salt and pepper hair, or pale white, no hair, and light eyes. Because there's a texture there, right? So there's an oddity to the way that someone may appear to the other world. But to me, it's like, oh yeah, aphrodisiac. Like it's that type of thing. But it's a different mindset. And so when you see people who are grabbing for power, personally speaking, for me, I kind of go, I scan over them, and I'm looking for the person who is like in the background minding their own business, because that's the person that I'm going to probably have the best conversation with. And so even though you may not be where you want to be, you'll start to find that at a certain vibration, what the divine starts bringing you is a very, very elite pool of people from which to choose from. And the interesting part is that you're the newbie. And I always tell people this, especially those of you who are ascending. We're the newbies, so we're like the new meat in jail. Like they're looking and they're going, oh, who is this? Can we tame him? The answer is no. And so then the really, really powerful go, ooh, you can't tame him. Who is it? Who is it? Who is it? And it's not that you're trying to get the attention. It's the fact that you're standing out just like ridiculously, and people are just like, he has something interesting to say. And so you start to bring in a different vibration. And the reason I know that is because I've never considered this whole car a thing. I've never even thought of it until recently when I was standing out. I think I forgot where I was going. I think I was going to the beach. Because y'all know I love the sun. Vitamin D. Since I'm not getting... I need vitamin D. But the point is that your brain starts to function differently. And you start to stand out to yourself. Because I was just like, where the hell is this coming from? And I could just feel like my higher self just say, it's you. You just don't see the world the same way as others do. And so when you see super powerful people, you'll always notice that there's an entourage. And I always find that very interesting. But it's almost a defense wall, to be quite honest with you. Because I've already started thinking, I'm like, when this takes off, I'm probably going to need like a buffer. I'm going to need because I'm still human, and I still have my lower vibrational stuff. Like if my children are with me, I've already said this before, if my kids are with me and you step to my kids the wrong way, or I'm going to break your face, like it's not even going to be. So I need probably a buffer in between, my family and the external world, because I'll go to jail. And I'll be butt queen in jail too. Like it doesn't change my life. But you see what I'm saying? So I've thought stuff out that other people just are like, what the hell is he talking about? But to a truly powerful person, they're going, I totally get it. Yeah. And so how do you start navigating in a world that has assumed power or power grabs, and actually stand in your own power? And I guess that's what I wanted to say, is that you stand in it on your own accord, but you notice that your vibration, that you yourself have changed. And so your needs and demands have changed. For example, like I have to be very cautious now about my wording. I'll give you a perfect example. I had made a comment in a recent video about The Devil Went Down to Georgia, and I had said, because there was a song that was popping in my head, and I had no idea who I was referencing. I had no clue what it was talking about. But I made a comment, an off-the-cuff comment, where I said, I'm from New Orleans, I don't go to Georgia. And someone took it the wrong way, like I'm a Saints fan, is all I was saying. As a Saints fan, I don't patronize the Falcons. That was the only thing I meant. But what you mean and how it's interpreted becomes a roadblock, because someone who lived in Georgia might have taken offense to it, not realizing that I was making a sports reference, because it was so unusual for me to make sports references that you would understand that it would probably be me looking my nose down at Georgia. It's not Georgia, it's the Falcons that I have an issue with, and it's a sports thing. And so I realized in that moment that I must be more powerful with my voice than I thought, because it actually pissed someone off. And I was like, oh, there's a whole set of other things I have to think about now. And so that was one of the things that you notice with power grabs, is when people try to vie for something that they can't actually hold, it's something that's borrowed anyway. It's not like the truly powerful are powerful internally is what I'm trying to say. They're not powerful externally. That manifests because of what's going on the inside. What they're using their voice for, what they've chosen to do business in, what they're trying to do for the vibration of humanity is the power. And it's something that comes from the soul. And so when you see power grabs, it's almost to the point where I try not to giggle because I'm trying to be a judgment-free zone, because I know for myself that people judge me a lot because I'm very spiritual. And a lot of very powerful people find that almost like their nose is a little bit up. And so I occasionally have to remind them, like, hey, you need to trim your nose hairs. Because like that's how far up they have their nose about. And so, but I don't regret it. See, that's one of my unique, honest traits, is the fact that I am connected to something much greater. But what I noticed is that probably would be indicative of my personal life, that my partner would probably be someone who's more materialistically driven or more logically driven. You know what I mean? Because I am coming at this from a very spiritual oddity. People don't understand transcendence. They don't get it. They don't understand what's going on in my head all the time because I'm very aloof. And so people are like, I'm an odd person, and people kind of look at me, but they don't consider me eccentric. They just consider me very spiritual. But you can't really put me in a box, because the way that I look at the world is from the context of the divine, and I look at what the divine would say or do in that situation, and then I commune with myself and I work it out. But to my partner, they would probably be super eccentric. They would be very odd, but very logical. So their brain would look at it from the analytics of, well, if this plus this equals that, but there's a question on this, then I got to square root this to get to that. And so while they're doing all of that, I'm doing the same thing, but in a spiritual manner. My logic is working upwards, whereas theirs might be working across. And that's the essence of power, is understanding how someone else operates and looking at them for their vibrational output. Because though those two things are crossing each other, ironically, they're crossing each other, it doesn't mean that they are vibrationally matching. And so that's one of the stresses that happens when you see power grabs. It's just because someone wants something. If it's not theirs to have, which I've had to learn the hard way, if it's not something that's theirs to have, then it's just going to be a moment where the world sees that you went for something and it didn't work out. And I always look at people and I go, well, that's assumed power here. Because a truly powerful person, even if that's true and even if it wasn't meant for them, they're still going to go for what's theirs, right? And so understand that the truly powerful will just try again. And if that doesn't work, they'll try again until the shoe fits. Because it's not sometimes that people make the mistake of assuming that because something doesn't work out that it's permanently not theirs. But it's a great example of what they said in Matrix, where she says you were not the one, or whatever she says, or something that alluded to that. That no, you're not the one, because he wasn't ready for it yet. The moment he became ready for it, he was the one. And so understand that process, because I find that people who assume power or are on borrowed power working for someone else that gives them their legacy, that they've never stepped out for themselves. But what they do is, typically, sweeping generalization, they will stop at a certain point because it was blocked one time. But what they don't realize is that maybe it's just a slight redirection. Like, why don't you instead of going this way, 2 feet that way, and try again. You own the company. Why? Because the way that you were trying to do it was in someone else's kingdom. You have your own power within you, and so trying to align, and this is one of the things I struggle with all the time, is the fact I know what I'm capable of. But what the divine always wants from me, my higher self, for those of you who are very analytical, is that, my highest self, I should say, is that they want me to fit into my own kingdom, to be all general. But you see what I'm saying? Like, it needs to be mine. And it doesn't need to be in someone else's voice. And so one of the great things about being trained with something that's bigger and wiser than you are is that it's going to do it in a public setting because whatever is yours publicly. And so I would say, okay, so you failed in public, and is that part of your life path? Well, yeah. Then keep going. And so that's one of the things that I've learned the hard way, is that, there are things that I'm exposed to that my higher self is like really all about. And as the lower expression, I'm just like, why am I doing this? And then I have to actually ask myself, and I go, oh, because I'm learning what the value of this X factor is to this Y equation. And so the point of this all is that that's an internal power. It's something that happens from within us and starts to then materialize externally. But one of the things that I fell into a trap of is I have this tendency to, if someone has a wall up and I can't break through the wall, I'm a path of least resistance person. I will literally go, okay, and go a completely different direction. And so sometimes the only problem with that is that when you have white people problems, or you're truly an affluential person, I'm making words up, y'all, we'll roll with it. If you're truly someone who is in their own power, then you're seeking someone who is that is going to be like your counterpart. But what happens is, like I said, you don't sometimes take the right perspective in your approach, because, like I said, it didn't dawn on me until very recently, like the past week, that my partner is probably exceedingly eccentric. There's something odd about my partner, either to have the ADD or whatever it is, because I'm so spiritual, I'm so connected to the clouds, that the other person would be more grounded in the earthly plane and probably have their own things going on. And I know for myself, there's going to be a public part to this, and it's going to be something that people probably take pictures of and stuff like that. I don't know where that comes from, but it's something that my higher self is like just saying, okay, brace for impact, and not in a negative way. It's something that has to do with the public. And I don't always know what weird stuff comes from, but I'm always right intuitively. Like, that's one of my great gifts, is I do trust myself to know that my intuition is, and that's my internal power, is that I've always been right with my intuition. And so I know that that's coming in some form or fashion. But what I forgot is that there are people in the sphere in which I find energetically appealing, as far as business or personal matters, that are going to be different. And so when you are truly in your own power, then the issues that you encounter have now changed. And so instead of grabbing for power that's not yours, you just keep trying in order to find the key to fit into the lock that opens for you, because that's your path. But it's not like you're lost. It's that if you're with something higher or grander, and you are truly powerful, then there's nothing you can't do. You see what I'm saying? And so when there's nothing you can't do, then you're willing to try a bunch of different stuff. And that's actually something that's part of the courage and bravery that comes with a self-empowered person. Is that, okay, I failed, and people go, oh, he failed at that. And I go, yep, now I'm going to try here. And it's not like you're desperate. It's actually you're learning. You are learning in every avenue until the right one comes along. And then you're like, oh. And then that particular avenue, that's what real power is. When that avenue opens to you, like legs, once that opens, you're like in hog heaven, right? But it took you to try because you had to learn. You can't, let's say you want to be a newscaster. You won't always know which vehicle is the best one for you. You're going to have a plethora of opportunity and different options. But you're going to try, like, okay, maybe you want to be a crime scene investigator, and you want to cover, like, crime stories and homicides. And then you're like, oh, that didn't work out. But you learned in the process that was the point of it. And then you go, well, I want to go do something fun and airy, so let's go talk about gossip, and let's be like an entertainment reporter. And then you try, and you're like, well, I'm not really good at that, because I don't really care what, Bananarama's doing, this many years later. I'm not interested, although I like Bananarama. And then you go, okay, well, do I want to be a news anchor? And then you go and you find out that you don't want to be strapped to a desk. But then you find political commentary and working in that field and doing something for humanity, and suddenly you found your niche. Because it speaks to everything you just learned. So there's a little bit of gossip, there's a little bit of the reporting from the homicide. You're covering all sorts, but you had to go all down those different paths in order to stand in your truth. And suddenly when you found the exact vehicle that was right for you, then you step into it. And then what happens? You immediately, from what I can tell, for myself at least, become more reclusive. because now you found your passion, and so the world reverts to you. Instead of you now seeking the light, you've become the light. And so when you stand as the light, then what do? You tend to move back a little bit because you know that what you need is going to be attracted to you. And so that was a very interesting way of also expressing the whole car thing. Is because for me personally, I remember when I was very young that my stepdad offered me to get like a convertible. And I was like, no. And I realized that even back then, when I walk into a crowd, I get looked at. It is what it is, right? But it's a presence. So when truly powerful people, no matter where they are economically, or no matter where they are, they could be in a hat with sunglasses and hiding, and typically, like I said, powerful people will try to be more demure and invisible to the naked eye. They want to live their life and do it in a way that their family's preserved and they have a normalcy. But borrowed power, or people who are trying to grab for power, are the opposite. They want to be seen. They want to be out there. And so it's the complete opposite. And so of what I am. And so I realized that I started to change the direction of who I was looking at. So where I was once focused on people who were very outgoing and in the public, I realized that I'm going to have a life that engages that level. I'm probably going to need someone who is not like that. I'm going to want to be with somebody who helps humanity in a way that doesn't put them always out and probably has a wall. And so then I was like looking back at a situation in the past where I really had a crush on somebody and they just didn't respond. And instead of me going, oh, they're probably reclusive or quiet, I was like, oh, they're just not interested. And completely probably fucked that whole thing up because it just should have been like, oh, well, universe, if it's meant to be, then it's meant to. But I didn't do that. Instead, I just immediately cut it off. And so this is like kind of a blend of different topics, but you understand what I'm saying. Like when you reach your true power and you are in your sphere of your energy, your higher self is already directing you towards one particular party. And that's what divine union is, right? Like where there's an Oprah, there's a Stedman. You know what I mean? And so there's always the bookends that are meant to be together in friendship, companionship, love, and so forth. But in business, you also have to consider the same thing. Because I've noticed that probably, I keep saying it, I didn't realize how often I'd said it, but I'm more the omega. I like to be behind the scenes a lot more than being in front. Now, I'm really funny, so if it's like a duo that's very comedic, then I'm going to be with the part, like in business in the front. But if it's something that's more business driven, then I'm probably going to be more just like sunglasses in a town car being driven somewhere as opposed to being in a convertible, because that's not what I want. I don't want to be seen. Whereas my partner, he may be more prone, or she may be more prone, because hell, it's probably a girl, could be more prone to a convertible. But forever and a day, whenever we show up into an environment, it's going to show something that's not verbally exchanged, we think. But to someone like me, who's very logical, or someone very exceedingly powerful, they're going to notice that I'm the one that gets driven in the car, and the other person drives a very fancy sports car. One of us is no longer in the shadow of someone else, and someone is still in the shadow of someone else, because otherwise you wouldn't need that much attention on yourself. When you stand in your own truth, then you are going to want reclusivity. You want to be alone. You want to be able to hear the voice of God, or hear your higher intellect, or be able to discern for yourself what the facts are by reading something and subject matter on your own. So then you are more about what? Stepping back. You want to observe the universe as it is in order to truly grasp what it's about. Because if you're always in the light and there's always something snapping at you, and this is a big lesson for me. I'm sharing what my lesson is here. I'm not talking to anybody down or whatnot. I'm just literally sharing with you what I've learned. And so because of that, that person can't ever truly hear their highest self all the time, because they're so busy being externally stimulated that it's very hard for you to hear your heart or to hear your head. And so that's one of the great things about the whole little car analogy or metaphor, is the fact that sorry, I just went, I'm pretty, I hope I win, in my head, because I was just like, oh, great, Al. Can't remember the variation between them. No, not always. I forget my name sometimes. That's how, I'm really good at what I do when I show up. Like, when I'm doing a task, I'm great. But I'm also a really, really happy person. So sometimes, like, I'll have butterflies in my head. Like, just thinking butterflies. And people go, that's really eccentric. And I go, yeah, you carry like 25 razors. I'm going to borrow one of the razors. I'm just going to tell you right now. So it doesn't bother me. But it seems like other people get a little bit freaked out by my eccentricity. Where I'm like, just wait till you meet my partner. I haven't met my partner in this lifetime yet. But I'm telling you right now, I can visually tell that this person has idiosyncrasies, and it's odd. It's an odd duck. And, of course, our sex life is going to be phenomenal, and everything's going to be hunky-dory, but to the external world, it's going to be very private, and very stoic expression, except, like, when we're together, because I have a feeling that we're going to be all touchy, but I'm getting all personal on this. But that is the essence of power, is to understand that when you stand in your own truth, then you start to see, or at least, wait, let me say that again. I'm a Cancer, so I can feel things that others can't feel. And so there's this, like, dance that's happening between me and someone else in the world. It's very interesting because they're very logical and they're very grounded and they're very much about, like, they can see the same that I can see. Like, we have the same opinions on things, and we're being drawn together because we see the world in the same way, but we came to it from different directions. My partner is very, very logical and very, very about statistics and data and stuff like that. I can tell because of the energy coming at me. And that's the strength of my own power. And to anybody else who's not in this circle, you're going to be like, what is he talking about? But to those of you who are in my vibration, you know exactly what I'm talking about because you have the same dynamic going on. And then I'm very, like, I go through it very spiritually. I'm intuitive. I get my information from a higher point. So but they're two meeting at eye level. At least so far. There's two energies being brought together that are at eye level. But there's like a little bit of a break there because I think the other person is just like, he's a little out there. But what you don't know is that I already know that behind the scenes of my partner, it's a whole eccentric thing going on there. You see what I'm saying? Where I look very outgoing and to the outside world because I do this, and I'm very much all about like humor and stuff like that. In my private life, this person and I are going to be very reclusive. It's going to be about us stimulating each other's brains. It's going to be us stimulating each other in other ways. It's going to be us about philanthropic interest. It's going to be it's a perfect union between two opposing energies that have the same reason for being on the planet. And so there's going to be, like, I think someone mentioned to me recently, I forget where I saw this, but like there's certain people, power couples that come together, and they only will attend one thing a year, one ball. And I was like, that sounds like me. I think I'm interested in that. Like, because I know that I sound very outgoing and all that stuff, but I am when it's part of it, because my task on this planet is to help raise the vibration of humanity. That's something that's very public. But in my private life, I'm completely the opposite. I'm an undercover person. Like, you will see me, I shouldn't probably say this, but let's put this, it wouldn't be odd to see me on a bus, no matter how much money I ever have, to just be on a public bus. I don't need to, because I look at the world differently. I don't want to put more carbon, I don't want to deal with more car traffic, I don't want to be stressed, I don't want to be this, and there's XYZ, I've already thought this out. And so it wouldn't be that odd. I'm one of those people that if I ever when I finally hit my mark and I do what I need to do to stand on stage, I will be the person that will be occasionally bartending for a charity, and people wouldn't know it. I wouldn't promote it. I would just do it for the charity work. Or I would be the person who takes the bus. And my partner probably is not going to like that very much, but I can handle my own. You see what I'm saying? So I'm all about blending and being part of the environment in order to figure out what is going on in the dynamic. I'm the undercover boss. I'm the boss that would run an empire and then go and be a peasant for 2 weeks just to see what's really going on in the kingdom. And I would go and I would see the truth of what is happening. That's why I like journalism and reporters so much, and why I have a crush on Anderson Cooper, is because they're able to blend in and they're the voice of the people. I'm a little bit different because I can do it in writing. I can be a newspaper person and just be a newspaper reporter and go and just write about it and still be like behind the scenes. You see what I'm saying? But it's still interactive with the people. And so that's the great thing about power. But just understand that, when you are truly in your own power, what I'm finding is that what you thought you wanted, or I'm sorry, the way that you thought you would be to the world is not always the way that you envisioned it at first. Because now I realize that what my truth is that I don't have to go seeking this party. They're seeking me at the same time. And so our energies will come together. It's probably something random, like something I say in a video that I don't think really matters, but it's something that I thought was interesting, will grab their attention. I don't know. Like, the divine has its own thing. The universe has its own way of doing it, and I finally have let go of trying to control it. Because I really, like, there was a video I recently did about the Academy of Earth, and I just think that's a phenomenal piece, and I'm really proud of it. Not that much response to it, but I'm going to tell you this, I'm super proud of it, and so it might come from that article. For some reason it's being brought to my mind now. But that is the essence of eccentricity. Like, that's the thing that I wanted to point out, is that the truly powerful are eccentric. They have found a way to fine-tune whatever that unique quality is and bring it to the world in a very powerful way. But just because you see that I'm an odd duck, I had to realize that my partner is probably equally odd, just behind the scenes. My partner probably has a very good emotional control, because I bring the emotion. I'm the Cancerian Leo rising. I mean, come on, the two common. So the other person might be a Gemini or a Capricorn. That would make sense. But can you see how that's completely opposing vantage points? But when we come together, I'm not emotional, which is interesting. I use my intuition, but I control my... So when I come together with this party, I have a feeling that both of us are non-emotional people until we come into interaction with each other, in which case both of us will become bubbling idiots and just be like, like all the time. It'll be just a dynamic between two people who probably can't stop touching, not in a PDA kind of way, but like in a knees touching when we're sitting next to each other, or holding hands, or something that's very kind of graceful about it. But it's just the way that's the missing piece that I've noticed with me in particular, is that no one else is completing me. It's just that there's a part of me that knows that there's only one other party in the world. And that's why I was saying that when you're truly powerful and you're not in power grabs and whatnot, your pool of partners becomes lower and smaller. And I'll give you a perfect example. Wording is exceedingly important to me, and I'm assuming that probably to my partner. Because the word competitive advantage, to me, turns me off. But if you rephrase something and say, are you the right person for the job, and do you think you have a better skill set, then my brain goes, yes. Same thing. No and yes. Immediately, I'm turned off by anybody who uses competition in front of me. Yet, if you ask me if I'm the right person for the job, I had to learn this with the divine, and I have been working this out. And so, my higher self. Which I call it the divine universe, because the divine universe is where the soul lives. So don't get, like, people get really weird about stuff like that, and I find that funny, because if you truly understand the nature of all life, then you understand you are an extension of God. So for you to say something like that is still true. Like I said, there's multiple truths to all things, but I'm getting on a digression. But the point is that notice the variation, that when you use the word competitiveness in front of me at my vibration, for whatever reason, I get turned off. I'm just like, But if you say, are you the right person for the job? Don't you think that you're worthy? The answer is yes. There's a vibrational tonality to the variation between the two. I don't know why it triggers me. Well, I don't want to say triggers me. It's a subliminal message for my higher self that this is not the avenue for me to go. If someone says to me that you have to stand up for yourself and be more competitive, I'm immediately going to go, yeah, I'm not interested, and I'll turn. But if you say to me, you've worked your whole life for this, why don't you go ahead and just stand up for yourself? Guess what I'm going to do? Yeah. You see the difference? And so that's one of the great things about your own personal power and your own strength, is to understand that when you say things, understand that you have to put yourself in the position of another party. And I realize that's when I notice I've arrived at whatever my new vibration is the moment that I was able to figure that out. And it was exactly in that setting, which was, I now am in a position where everything I do, I put myself in another Now, I don't control if they like it or not. I don't really care. But I'm still going to I do care. I'm not a cold person. I'm always going to I'm very empathetic toward other people, but I'm not sympathetic to people. I'm very empathetic. I feel for the other person, but I'm not going to give you sympathy just because you think that you are owed that. That's the assumption of power. I don't do that. That's manipulative. But I will be empathetic, and so I will always put myself in the opposing person's shoes and try to find that middle ground. And so that's the variation. So that's when I realize that I've changed internally, and that's why I know that all things are about to open, is because I've opened myself up to a great deal more. But that's what I'm saying about when you become yourself and you stand in power. The truly powerful get to a point when they see things like this just differently than the rest of the world. But you don't see them vie for power. They pull back. True. I don't know why. Bygones. But when you get to that point of true power, I'm just going to give you guys a heads up. You become more eccentric, because what you're tapped into is that unique standout quality that makes you keep going. It's that part of you that fires you up. And for me, it is spirituality, but in spirituality that is all welcoming to all people. I'm all about humanity raising their vibration. That's my big turn on, right? And so, but there's a whole new set of issues that came with this awakened spirit. And that's what I wanted to say. So when you see people vying for power, when they're doing power grabs and stuff, just know that they will never reach their true potentiality, because they're too busy trying to grab something materialistic, and they're not standing in the truth of themselves. They're trying to get something that where I was running into like a roadblock, people will run into the wall and try to smash through the wall. You see what I'm saying? And so that's a very interesting point. So, like, people, have you ever noticed people who drive sports cars? This sweeping generalization. I don't mean to cast stones, but they tend to have more accidents, probably because they're so busy looking around instead of looking at the fucking road. Whereas people who have drivers never have accidents. Why? Because someone else is driving them while they do what they need to do. You know what I mean? And so I just wanted to point that out, because like people get stuck in this situation, especially I did for a very long time, which is like, why isn't this working? Why blah blah blah? Because my higher self is something that you can't put in a box. And there's at least, I have 22 projects that I have in my Rolodex. That all needs is investment of just the smallest thing. But instead of me going to seek it out, I've learned to just kind of pull back on it. I say what I need, what I would like to do to the universe, and I put it out on YouTube sometimes because it has to do with like things that I'm actually passionate about. And then I allow interest to come to me if that's the way it's supposed to be. Because I've noticed for me, power grabs where you try to get something, it's kind of like it's exactly where the law of attraction works against you, because it just goes nope, and you're like chasing it. But if you stop for a minute, you can run away from it and then it chases you, but usually there's a toxic element there. Why is anybody chasing anybody else? It should be something that comes together. But when it comes to this type of mind frame, it just has to do with the fact that the power that I am given is now starting to affect the world around me. And so that's what I want to say about power grabs and about power in general, is that it's something that's bestowed upon you from your highest expression, and it comes to you when you'll notice it, because suddenly power grabs are a turn off, competition is a turn off, all of that becomes very petty. And so what do you do with yourself? Oh, you have changed vibration, haven't you? You've ascended, because your world has now completely shattered. Everything that used to be of interest to you suddenly goes, oh man, now what? And you literally have this phase like I'm going through right now, which is like, now what? But your vibration is where it needs to be, because there's nothing you can't do. So your mental prowess is now focused on the fact that anything is possible. And if you can't choose, because there's like a gazillion things that you can choose to do, then you have to find your center point and just go, okay, what is going on here? And suddenly your problems change, because you know that your work is done. I'm good. I've proven myself. I don't need to do that anymore. I don't care what people say about me, and I'm in a position where I empathize with others, and I try to put myself in. But I'm not trying to tell people what they need to hear. You guys know I piss people off left, right, and center, and I don't take pleasure in it. But if you can't deal in truth, If you're always pleasing everybody, then that's not truthful, right? Because the truth is going to bother people. A lot of people are asleep, right? But that's the power. I'm getting into a digression with my own thing, but just know that your problems will change, and when you get there, you're going to look at the assumption of power, like nepotistic qualities, as something that's just a matter of fact. People have this thing when you are not in alignment with a higher vibration, where you look like you're like, oh, why does that person? Why that you get jealous over stuff that you shouldn't be jealous of? A father who gives his son or daughter, specifically, a father who's born up and gives his son or daughter a leg up in order to. That's what you're supposed to do. Why are we jealous of that? Now, if the kid doesn't do anything with the power, well, that's on the kid. It's not on the parent. There's nothing wrong with nepotism if it's given to the right party. It's what that party does with it, which is the creation of the shadow. So, like a parent with true power will give their kids the best education in the world. What are you going to say about that? Well, how come they get better? Because their parents worked their ass off in order to make sure that they gave them that opportunity. Now, what the kid does with it, like the parent really, when you think nepotism, I think the person who probably suffers the most in nepotistic situations is the parent. Because if they give their child a leg up and they do something asinine with it, and they don't take any chances and live in their shadow and just like do like something that's so common that you just look at it and you go, oh, that's what I raised them to do. And it reflects back on the parent. The external world has and I never understood it, like, especially now that I'm at this vibration, I just don't get it. I would be proud of anybody who did that for their kid. That's what you do for your children, right? And so that's one of the things that happens, is that you start to understand that there's no power grab there. You know what I mean? For me, though, personally, I've had to think this out. The truth of my power is this. My kids are going to have to work for it. I'm not giving them a fucking thing. I mean, don't get me wrong. Depending on how much my estate is worth, everybody gets a certain amount. I've already talked about it. Everybody gets it. Even if it's my stepkid, it's still getting out of... I'm going to leave everybody equal amounts of money. Okay. But as far as the empire, whatever I build in my life, it's going to the kid that is doing the most. You know, and it's not going to be competitive. It's going to be literally who matches the vibration, who's able to understand it, who's able to do this. And so, who's the best person for the job? That's where a powerful person looks at something. Sure, they can have a billion, gazillion different people they can choose from. Look at the divine. The divine has all these people that it can talk through. Who is in the right vibration for the task that needs to be done? Okay. Are they capable of pulling off? Yes. I'm going to push them on it. And here's the interesting part. What I've learned from my own experience with a higher power is this. They know your turnoffs. And one of the easiest ways for you to see if you are betraying yourself is with verbiage. Because I kept running into this thing where I kept getting turned off by the competitive advantage and competitive stuff, that vernacular, and I was not interested. And instead of me stopping for a minute and going, oh, that's a red flag. If that keeps coming up, then it's not meant for me. Because the divine will never use verbiage that turns you off. But it will use verbiage for where you should go. That's the essence of true power, right? And so understand that, because like with my kids, whoever is going to take over the empire, it's going to be the person that matches that vibration. Who's the right person for the job? Who's going to actually prioritize properly? Do they have the same value system that I have in this scenario? Do they understand the plight of the people that we're trying to help? Are they going to deal or going to help with the homeless? Are they going to help the gay population? Are they going to help women? Are they going to... Hopefully all of that is done by the time my kids are around, but you never know. But the point is, do they align with it? And so I've recently realized that power grabs are ineffective and can't work because you can't reach what you're seeking because you're trying to live in someone else's shadow. Otherwise, it's something that gets handed to you in an arbitrary way. Usually somehow, it could be through love. And that's a big thing, like people are like, what if you are marrying a wealthy person? Well, okay, what difference does that make? I'm still the one that has to carry my own weight. Again, it's that nepotistic quality. Even if it's in a relationship, sure, you can invest in it, but it has to be in something that they want. What brought you together? Is it the interest in the company? Okay, then that's the right reason. And you're not, do the prenup. I've said this before. I'm a big person on prenup. I don't care. Just sign up for it. Do a prenup. Anything that you have before you get into the wedding or into the marriage is theirs. Anything that you make while you're together in a dynamic where you're in business, that's mutual. You 50-50, that's it. Anything that you particularly bring to the table out of that scenario that is not part of their life, that is something that you're doing out of that's yours. See? His, ours. His, hers, ours. Hers, ours. Like, think of it in that way. And that's when you understand it's the essence of power, right? But I don't know how I got on that tangent. I guess somebody needed to know that. But the moral of the story is, I'm going to stop now because I'm starting to get up into these little fun things. But I just wanted to say that when you vie for power, then you're chasing someone else's dream. When it's true for you, it's something that will be handed to you in whatever way it comes to you. And so that relinquishing of control is really powerful because it's when you arrive at your destination. Because now, I'm not worried about, I'm at the finish line. I've crossed the finish line. There's a whole world that's opened up to me. I'm just well, who's going to be my partner? What are their interests? I'm eccentric in a spiritual way. They're probably opposite. And your world just completely changes because everything that you've been working for is done. The past, everything that I've built is mine. It's coming to me no matter what, is what I'm saying. And it's a very powerful place to be. And now I'm worried about cars. And I'm just I guess I guess I'm going to need somebody to drive me because I don't feel like driving. And, I'm probably going to be very busy and my world has changed. And so has my perspective. And suddenly, I'm not chasing the dream because I've already done the work. And it was a very pivotal moment in my life. And I'm super proud of it. But what I'm saying to you is that I'm not vying for anybody else's power because it's not mine. My power comes from within. And so whatever is now coming to me is already paid for. I've already done the work. And then on top of it, I got really good karma coming from the family and all the shit that went down with us. And so there's all these blessings coming. So, okay, what are you going to do with it? See, that's what I'm saying, is that when you're trying to vie for someone else's power, then you're not busy looking at what are the charities you're going to be supporting. Who is your partner? What are they going to be from? What are they like? Are they going to be more logical with you? Are they going to be more materialistic since I'm more spiritual? Are they going to be this? Or are they going to be that? And you're not literally putting names on anybody because I was doing that for a minute. I have crushes on specific people, and I was naming the puppy without realizing that I don't know everybody in the world, and there's 7 billion people, so the puppy might be someone that I don't know. But I do know traits, and that's what I'm talking about being in your own power, is that I do understand they're going to be unlocking my key, and I'm going to be unlocking their key. And I know there's going to be fabulous sex and all that stuff. I mean, we're probably not going to leave the house very often, unless it's for work. And so I think that's why I have this thing in preconceived notion now that my partner and I will probably end up in work together because of the fact that we enjoy each other's company. When you find your best friend and your partner, then it's very easy for you to go into a situation where you want to interact and work with each other because the other person knows exactly what you're going to say or do. But when it comes to problems, I always find it more rewarding for me because I'm so independent that it's very good for me to find another expression of that externally. And so, sorry, someone's showering. But that's very important. So understand that for me personally, I don't mind the idea of working with my partner because I'm going to say things that they probably didn't think of from a different perspective, even though we're pretty similar people, and he's going to say something that I probably would never have thought of because he's a different person. So where I'm more etheric and in this dimension up here, we're in the same dimension, but I'm more head in the clouds, thinking more altruistically. Hello, altruistic channel. And the other person is probably more grounded and earthbound and more about material world and how do we contact everyday people, where I'm all about maybe the top 2%. You know what I mean? And so that merging of the two minds is a great vehicle to bring up a new empire or business or whatever it is to the world that somehow actually incorporates raising the vibration. That's all I'm saying. But notice the variation. Now my world is completely different. Now I don't I don't worry about what I'm missing. I'm not vying for power. And that's one of the big reset things, is when you've arrived in your proper destination. I'm going to end here. When you arrive where you need to be, then everything that you were worried about before completely falls away because it's already paid for. It's done. That's power. That's the power of you. And so that's really it's really important and a very powerful statement to make to the collective, is to understand and hopefully resonate with what I'm saying. I'm not interested in a sports car. But it was because of the fact of where I've gotten to. You know what I mean? During the process, I probably would have been all about the convertible or whatever the little sports car is. But because I'm not in that vibration anymore, now I'm all about the town car. Or if I do drive my own car, it's going to be a Jeep. Something that's still... It's understated. I want to be understated, right? And then I'm probably going to stay more home, and I'm not going to go out as much. I've done that. I was a bartender. I've already taken care of that. We're good to go. I would rather be with my husband and talk about politics, because we're probably going to clash on certain topics. But it's going to be stimulated, and we'll probably talk about it during, like right after sex, Make it fun for everybody. Well, not everybody. There should be only 2 people, honey. I'm not doing an open relationship. I'm just putting that out there. But there's going to be we're going to talk about books, and we're going to be reading things together. It's going to be stimulating up here, which will stimulate everything down here nonstop. You know what I mean? And then I also have a very, very direct way of communicating, and so I'm pretty sure that they do too. Or they might be a little bit more sensitive. They might be more sensitive to things, and so I might have to watch how I say it. But the dynamic of what my life is about has shifted entirely to a brand new focus of something that I haven't even seen yet. But because of the fact that I stand in my own power, there are no mistakes, and it's not like I'm completely flighty or crazy. I'm actually one of the most analytical people in the world. I see things long term. So if it's coming up, then that means that it must be close. I just wanted to say that because this world is everybody's just vying for this power, and it's rented power. The true essence of power is to stand in your own truth, stand forward in front of the world, and make mistakes, do stupid stuff, do whatever it needs to happen. And then the one thing that you're very clear on is I don't play games with people. So that's the one thing that I'm focused on right now is people who are secure in their own selves, where I don't mind dating tips and stuff sex tips and stuff that's cute, to talk to your friends. But if I have to go through a barrage of people to get to you, and if you're that insecure that I'm going to hurt you, then you're not seeing me. You see what I'm saying? I'm not going to sit there and be tricked by friends and be tested by friends in order to connect my heart with yours, because then there's no availability to that. Now, I'm not saying that friends shouldn't be all inquisitive and up my butt about why I'm doing this and this and that. That's fine, but I'm talking about trickery and that whole little competitive thing where people are not for your best interest, but they're acting your friends. You know that your friend is jealous of this, that, or the other. And so if that's at play, then that might deter me. But other than that's my biggest problem right now is me looking at that and just going, yeah, I'm not going to play a game with my partner. It's going to be... You see what I'm saying? My world is completely different. And that's what I'm saying to you all, is that when you get where you're going, because most of you are really close, your world changes, and you are truly the powerful person. So understand that you now have to go that next level up. You won't get the keys to the brand new palace until you know how you're going to spend your day in the palace. So what is it you're going to be doing? And so that's what I'm talking about, how arriving in power is more important. You're going to be less flashy. You're not going to be egomaniacal. You're going to be very humble. You're going to be kind. And so your world changes. And that's all I wanted to say. I keep going on a tangent. You guys have a great day. Bye.